go away. Next slide. So we're going to do a quick round of introductions of the project team, and then we'll go around and do some introductions of the CAC members that are in attendance this evening, and then we'll get the meeting started. So next slide. So I'm going to start off and introduce the MCDOT team. Again, my name's Corey Pitts. I was the project manager for the last phase of work that occurred about a year ago, and have been the primary point of contact for this project up to this point. With me, I have Darcy Buckley. You want to give a quick introduction, Darcy?
Hi, I'm Darcy Buckley. I think know you all. Happy to be back virtually in the director's office with MCDOT.
And we also have Joanna Conklin with us.
Hi, everyone. Joanna Conklin. Nice to see you all. I am the county's Bus Rapid Transit Program Manager.
And kind of a new addition through a consulting agreement, we have Denny Fennerin, who will be functioning as the primary project manager for this project. Do you want to introduce yourself, Denny?
Hi, everybody. You may recognize me. I worked on the phase 2 planning study. So I worked with you all last go around, and I will be around this time. So I would like to introduce you all to our consultant design team. If everybody wants to wave their hand as I mention their name, we have Mike Chamberlain from Stantec doing some of the roadway engineering design, and Lori Adgate from Stantec, and Randy Napick from IBI Group. They're doing some of the service planning and traffic analysis, and Andrew Peace, also from the IBI Group. Next slide, Randy. So we're going to go over the meeting agenda. So we're going to talk about the meeting objectives and the agenda, a quick project refresher, a project update and schedule, the presentation and focus discussion, and then the next steps moving forward. So the objectives of tonight's meeting, we're going to update you all on the status of the project since we've met with you last, as it's moving forward into preliminary engineering. And we're going to introduce to you some of the design refinements that we are considering as part of this preliminary engineering process. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback on some of the refinements that we are considering at this point in time. Next slide, Randy. So the refresher, and you all are old hats at this now. So some of this is not going to be new to you, but we're going to go over it quickly. The project purpose is to provide a new transit service with greater travel speed and frequency along Maryland 355 between Bethesda and Clarksburg that will help accomplish pretty much everything on the right. I think at one of our last CAC meetings, Corey said we were trying to do everything, including, stop the cicadas from coming. We have a lot of needs that we are trying to meet with this project, and I'm not going to read through them all for you right now. So go on to the next one, Randy. So if you've been up and down the 29 corridor, you've probably seen the flashy flash buses. It's the Maryland 355 BRT is part of the county's vision for over 100 miles of flash BRT service in 11 corridors countywide. The 29 Flash BRT began operations on October 14th of 2020. So if you've seen them out there, they look pretty great going up and down 29. Next slide. You all have seen this map already. The corridor extends approximately 22 miles from Bethesda to Clarksburg, and it contains a diversity of travel needs, trip purposes, and land use.
Denny, I'm sorry, I accidentally turned off your video by mistake. I was trying to stop all video.
Oh, okay.
My apologies.
Oh, there. Did you get it?
Yep, I'll stop experimenting.
All right, great. Okay, So the design segments, there are 7 design segments, which we've talked about in the past. It goes from, the project runs from the Bethesda Metro Rail Station in the south to Middlebrook Road, or I'm sorry, to Clarksburg Outlets in the north. You can see in the map on the right. For this phase of preliminary design, we are focusing primarily on segments 2 through 6, which includes the dedicated, most of the dedicated running way section. These are the more challenging areas of the project, whereas segments 1 and 7 are operating in mixed traffic. So we aren't focusing on them in this piece of design. However, the BRT service could run beyond the limits of the dedicated infrastructure. Next slide, Randy. So coming out of phase 2 planning, we heard a majority of support for alternative B modified, including coming from the County Council T&E Committee, the Transportation and Engineering Committee. But there were some questions that weren't quite resolved. And so we didn't ask the county to move forward with a locally preferred alternative. And we solicited some feedback from stakeholders, such as the cities of Rockville and Gaithersburg. And consequently, some of our design ideas have evolved in a few of the locations, and we will be fleshing them out as a part of preliminary engineering. So the phase 2 planning outcome for our alternative be modified includes the BRT in dedicated lanes where feasible. And that also includes a single reversible peak direction dedicated lane north of Rockville in segments 4 through 6. It includes a single fixed southbound dedicated lane in segment 3 and mixed traffic in the far north, Clarksburg and South Bethesda segments. So as I mentioned, we're not focusing on the mixed traffic in the far north and south as this phase of preliminary design. And 2 of the things we're sort of looking at as part of this preliminary design and starting to flesh out some more of the questions include, in segment 3, we may look at some different traffic operation treatments. We may not do just fixed southbound. We might look at it being peak direction, dedicated lane. So we're taking a closer look at the traffic analysis through Rockville. And that was based on some feedback from the city of Rockville. Another location where we're looking at some more detailed analysis is in the core of Gaithersburg in segment 5. Alternative B modified proposed a 1 median reversible BRT lane. And given the constraints through that segment, and I know a lot of you up in the north are familiar with how tight that area is, the city of Gaithersburg was really concerned about some of the impacts that would result as a consequence of having a dedicated BRT lane through there. So we are taking a look at how we could handle some different sort of mixed traffic operations, or something that is called a business access and transit lane along the curb lane, looking at some different technological ways to make sort of a mixed traffic operation work a little bit better in the core of Gaithersburg. All right, next slide, Randy. Project update and schedule. So as I mentioned, we are entering the preliminary engineering phase, which includes the completion of a 35% design plans, a construction schedule, and cost estimate. As I said, the alternative B modified is the basis of design, with the refinements I previously mentioned being explored to enhance performance and reduce cost and impacts. In addition, federal and state environmental process will begin and occur in parallel with this design process. Next slide, Randy. So here's our fancy "We Are Here" slide. We have this at many workshops. You were a part of phase 1 conceptual planning engineering, where we had the previous CAC meetings, and we looked at all of the conceptual alternatives. We identified preliminary impacts and and costs. And now we are getting into more detailed preliminary engineering. We're doing design refinements, surveys, right-of-way, detailed environmental analysis, and detailed schedules and cost estimates. And then beyond that, we'll move into more detailed final design and ultimately construction. Next slide, Randy. And here's a project timeline. And this is another graphic that you've seen in the past. We have now stretched it out to reflect where we are in the preliminary engineering phase. We are planning to complete the preliminary engineering by 2022. So next slide, Randy. So here are key preliminary engineering milestones. The 15% role plan submission will be completed in summer 2021 with an adoption of a formal adoption of the LPA, locally preferred alternative, in the summer or fall of 2021. 25% design progress plans, winter, spring of 2022, and then our 35% preliminary engineering plans being completed in fall of 2022, and then submission for mandatory referral in fall or winter of 2022. And then the public review of the environmental process alternative, which might be either a categorical or exclusion or an environmental assessment, which is a NEPA document, in fall or winter of 2022. Next slide, Randy. Actually, before Randy's going to take over and talk a little bit about what some of the design refinements are. That design refinements that we are looking into and where we're going with it. But before he does that, does anybody have any questions so far? All right, great. Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, thanks, Denny. And can everyone hear me okay? You're all on mute. Let me try to use my cursor pointer if you can see it moving on the slide right now over the title. I'll try to use that to point to some features on the slides. Oh, well, good evening, everyone. Really good to be here with you. My name's Randy Napick with IPI Group. I'm part of the preliminary engineering design team, and one of the newer faces here. Have not been along for the ride as long as many of you. But appreciate your dedication to the project, and like to share some of the issues we're working on through the preliminary engineering phase, and invite your questions and comments as we go through. I'll pause a couple of times as I present the material to see if there are any questions coming from the chat, or if anyone would like to raise their hand to speak. I'm going to start with the refinement of the service plan, and this is really, the routes on which the BRT vehicles will run, the places they serve, the destinations, the starting points. And as Denny mentioned in her presentation, the 355 corridor really is a combination of many different travel purposes. And we tried to look at refining the service plan as we move forward to increasingly reflect the travel origins and destinations, the commute patterns and some of the connections, keeping in mind that the 355 BRT is part of the larger ride-on system, connecting with a number of local routes, also has very important connections with MARC and the Metro Rail Red Line. So, all those things together form a system. So part of the opportunity for BRT is to contribute to that overall network of transit and perform very well with the markets we target. So from a service planning perspective, and my colleague Nick Hart from IPI Group is here today. He may help to answer some questions later. We're really looking at trying to maximize the speed and reliability of the BRT service through the corridor. This from a service planning perspective really means trying to make direct services that go where people want to go as directly and quickly as possible. So we're trying not to wind too much on the way. We're trying to be very straight in the routes we create. We're also operating, of course, in mixed traffic in a very heavily traveled arterial corridor. So the way we look at reliability in terms of traffic signalization and some of the treatments of the BRT infrastructure becomes really important. And we'll talk about that a little more later. We are refining the service patterns based on the rider needs that we've identified through the regional travel demand modeling, looking at current 2040 travel patterns. And we're using this information to help to inform some of the engineering design with the corridor. So as we're understanding the route structures, the number of vehicles, those things will influence things like where we need to have terminal capacity along the route at the ends of various trip patterns, the infrastructure capacity we'll need for running way, and so on. Another aspect of the service planning is the combination of the MD355 and Veers Mill BRTs in a segment from about the Rockville metro station, just the point where Veers Mill Road comes into 355, south of Rockville, up through Montgomery College, Rockville on the north side of Rockville. As Denny mentioned, there are a number of BRT corridors planned for the county, and these are two lines that happen to intersect, and they will be sharing the right-of-way. They'll be basically sharing the stations along this area and providing for connections to the south and the southeast through the Veers Mill corridor. So the 355 preliminary engineering team, ourselves, is taking the lead on the design of the shared infrastructure where the 355 and the Veers Mill project intersect. So this is raising some interesting design questions we're dealing with, and I'll talk in a little bit about some of the issues we're looking at around the Montgomery College Rockville campus. From the phase 2 planning, service plan emerged that shown on the left here may look familiar to those of you who were part of the process prior. It really consisted of 4 route patterns. There's a gold route to the north, providing service from roughly Montgomery College Rockville to both Clarksburg and Germantown. So you can see there's kind of a fork in the service up in the segment 7 in Clarksburg, with one of the patterns heading towards Clarksburg outlets and the other serving the Germantown Transit Center. There's a dark blue or navy route that is serving the kind of the heart of the 355 corridor. It's really providing connections among all of the destinations and residences and institutions along the core of the 355 corridor. That was envisioned to run from Lake Forest Transit Center in the north to the Grosvenor metro area. And then you can see on the south, there's a green pattern. This one running from Montgomery College Rockville down to Terminus near the Bethesda metro. Overlapping combined, these provide a very high quality of frequent service of BRT in the area, and also help to provide service that's geared towards different traffic patterns. So one of the things that we notice when we look at the travel patterns in the data is towards the north from, say, Clarksburg to Shady Grove. The travel is strongly oriented towards commuters, especially access to the Shady Grove Metro Rail as a feeder service to the Metro Rail. As you go towards the middle of the alignment, it's more about connecting some of the destinations within the corridor. Into the south, it's providing think of it as kind of a distributor between Metro Rail stations up into the Rockville area. As we've been looking at service, we're proposing some revisions to service based on the analysis that's taken place over the last several months for ridership. The basic overall structure is roughly the same. You can see we have a gold route to the north, we have a blue route in the center, and we have a green route in the middle. You'll notice that on the extreme north and to the south, we have some changes in the pattern of the line. So in the Clarksburg area in the north, beyond Gunners Branch Road, we see an end to the dedicated BRT infrastructure, and then running in more of a mixed traffic configuration to roughly the Milestone area where we propose to have a route terminus. The reason the line to the north beyond Milestone is dashed is we're envisioning that only certain trips, roughly half of the trips, maybe a third of the trips, would continue north to Clarksburg, really reflecting the nature of the demand in this area peaking towards the commuter hours of the day. But it would still be providing all day frequent service to Clarksburg. On the south, beyond the Grosvenor area, we're looking at another section of the service that is in mixed traffic, south to Bethesda metro area. And this would be providing service to the the extreme south of the corridor. So you can see we're proposing to cover the whole corridor just with a different set of patterns. Still the 4 route patterns, the Clarksburg and Milestone patterns to the north, both of those terminating at Montgomery College, Rockville. The blue going from the Lake Forest Transit Center to the Grosvenor White Flint area with specific aspects of the terminus, depending on some design considerations related to layover facilities and operating costs of that line, which we're digging into. And then the south, the green line would be from Montgomery College, Rockville. Again, it's terminating at Bethesda. You'll notice on the map, we're no longer proposing to serve the Germantown Transit Center. Of all the 4 patterns in the previous service plan, that was the one that had the lowest ridership and the least performance. And we think there are other ways to provide that service within the ride-on system. But it's really trying to focus the service where we think it has the most impact and most contribution to the overall network along the lines that are shown. Maybe I'll just take a breather there, see if there are any questions or comments or any hands raised so far. Okay, Denny's nodding no, so I will continue. So another aspect of the current design is looking at the refinement of the running way. Denny mentioned this in the introduction, looking at ways to improve the overall effectiveness of the BRT running way, but also being conscious of costs, right-of-way impact, overall traffic performance of the corridor. So it's natural in a project like this that as we go through the preliminary engineering phase, we would continue to refine the design approaches. We're also starting to look at a bit more of a fine-tuned level, looking at treatments more intersection by intersection versus overall approaches to the whole segment within the corridor. So it allows us to dig a little deeper. It allows us to fine-tune the approaches and make sure we're really focusing the infrastructure investments and technologies in ways that really provide the most benefit to BRT and the least overall impact to others in the project. So I'll talk a little bit about 2 segments where we're looking at design treatments and technologies. I should mention in terms of the technologies, 2 of the major options we have are traffic signal coordination and advanced strategies to manage the traffic signal system, making sure we're being very responsive to the demands of both transit and general traffic flow through the corridor at different times of day and under different conditions. We're also looking at applying transit signal priority, which you may have heard of, which is a treatment that helps to give preference to BRT vehicles moving through certain intersections to keep them moving and on schedule, because we know that both travel time and the reliability of service are going to be really important to attracting riders and making for a quality service. So let's look at 2 segments that we're digging into in particular. The first one I'll talk about is segment number 3. So this is through the center of Rockville. The boundaries are defined as Dodge Street, just south of the metro station, up to College Parkway. As Danny mentioned, in the alternative B modified alternative, this was proposed to have a single dedicated bus rapid transit lane that would operate in the southbound direction. And so one of the ideas we are looking to refine through the preliminary engineering phase is whether we can extend operational benefits to the northbound direction as well by being more precise in how we use the dedicated lane and looking at other strategies related to intersection technology and intersection infrastructure treatments for BRT. The other thing that's important about segment 3 is, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this is where the Veersmill BRT project intersects with 355. They kind of come together at the Rockville metro area, and they head north to Montgomery College, Rockville. So looking at the operational performance and the infrastructure needs of both lines in combination is something that we're looking at in this phase. Okay. The other segment where we're digging in a little deeper right now is in Gaithersburg. So this is segment 5 of the alignment. It's bounded by Montgomery Village Avenue and extends to Summit Avenue, really kind of the heart of the Gaithersburg core. This is an area where we envisioned a single lane as well, but in this case, it's proposed to be a reversible lane that would operate basically with the peak travel direction, different times of day. The City of Gaithersburg has expressed a desire to reduce the impacts of the project on the property owners along this segment who would be impacted by the widening of the roadway to implement the reversible lane. And they've expressed a preference for looking at a mixed traffic configuration where the BRT vehicles would run basically in the lanes within the existing cross-section of the roadway. So we're analyzing this now. We're looking to see if we can come up with a service alternative using a mixed traffic configuration that provides sufficient performance for the BRT and can meet the goals of the project, as well as the comments expressed by the city of Gaithersburg. Okay, and I'll just talk, just in general, as I mentioned, with the advancement of the project through preliminary engineering, we're looking at a much more fine level at all of the intersections, all of the turn lanes, all of the just different ways the roadway is configured throughout the project, and looking for ways to provide additional performance to bus rapid transit, to traffic, looking at pedestrian design considerations, looking at the location of stations and first last mile access of pedestrians and cyclists to reach those stations and go from the stations to and from their destinations. We're looking at technology strategies related to transit signal priority and traffic signal improvements. We're having discussions with WMATA on coordinating the location and design of BRT stations that will be at the Metro Rail Red Line stations to make sure that they're well integrated connections and they have taken into account the design needs of the corridor as well as future plans for the WMATA stations. And I'll talk about Shady Grove in that context in a moment. And we're also looking at the terminals of those different routes. So as you might recall from the service planning side, Montgomery College Rockville is one of those really important terminals where routes end and buses, pull in, they discharge the passengers, lay over until their next trip, and then reverse direction. So each of those areas has specific needs in terms of planning the terminals and getting into the operational needs. So really from top to bottom of the core segment from 2 to 6, we're looking at these strategies and ways to apply them just through the natural process of advancing the engineering design. Okay. So, just in terms of analysis and next steps as we're advancing the design, we're, looking at some of these potential refinements for segments 3 and 5, as well as opportunities to fine tune the infrastructure design from top to bottom of the entire corridor. We're conducting analysis of traffic conditions, traffic signal operations, and bus rapid transit operations using microsimulation software, which lets us take a fairly realistic look at how traffic and BRT would perform under simulated conditions. And we'll be coming forth in the future with the results of this analysis and looking whether there are various design refinements we can recommend as ways to improve the performance of the project or deal with other impacts or comments that have come from the planning phase, and bring that information to inform decision-making on how the project progresses. I'll take another pause to see if there are any more questions or comments. Okay, I can only see Denny. I don't know, Corey, okay, all right.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right, I'll go to the third and last area I wanted to touch on, and this is dealing with refinement of some of the specific station areas and alignment areas within the corridor. So let's start talking about the Shady Grove Metro. So the Shady Grove Metro is the highest ridership station on the MD355 system. It's really important for folks coming from the north, Clarksburg area, Germantown area, accessing Shady Grove and commuting further distances on the Metro Rail system. So it's a kind of a funnel of sorts, and having a good commuter connection to Shady Grove is an important benefit to folks in the northern part of the corridor. It also provides important connections to the south, going towards Montgomery College, Rockville, going towards other locations that are off the Metro Rail. We're looking as a part of this phase to try to improve the connection between the 355 BRT in the station located at Shady Grove and the Metro Rail station itself. The current alternative B modified platform is proposing a station on Somerville Drive. I'll show you on a map in a moment, which involves a bit of a walk to the station itself. Shady Grove, as you probably know, it's also set off a bit from 355. So for folks who are trying to go up and down 355 and have a fast transit connection it's a bit of a departure to get over to Shady Grove Metro. So, it's kind of a trade-off of making a good connection to Shady Grove, but also providing good direct service north and south through the corridor. So we're dealing with some of those challenges there. Also, WMATA has various plans, and they've done studies of the real estate they own, the future of parking lots. They're coordinating with the state and the 270 Express Lanes project, all of which are creating different aspects of the vision of what Shady Grove Metro will look like in the future, what will happen to land that WMATA owns. And so, we're also trying to find a solution that works for 355 in the near term as well as the long term, as there may be other redevelopment or infrastructure changes in and around the Shady Grove Metro station. So I'll show you a map. This is the Shady Grove area. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'll just hover it over the station itself. The gold line you see here coming up from the lower left-hand corner, this represents the current assumed service alignment coming out of the Phase 2 planning. And you can see the highlighted blue box area for Somerville Drive. This is the proposed location for the BRT station. You can see really what this is. This is a compromise between, going all the way up to the station at Shady Grove versus staying on 355, and, kind of splits the difference. But the result is that the substantial number of passengers who are transferring to and from the 355 BRT at Shady Grove have to walk about 3 to 5 minutes to reach the station head house. So we're looking at ways to try to reconcile this in consultation with WMATA. We have some other boxes here that are highlighted that we're looking at as alternative station locations. Maybe the most obvious one, where it's labeled here as Shady Grove West. This would be to put the 355 BRT station close to the existing kiss and ride and really close to the curb of the existing station. We've also looked at coming in from the east, so really coming around from the north, swinging through this area, and then kind of continuing across the bridge here back towards 355. This eastern area is also an area of proposed redevelopment and expansion of parking facilities and bus loops associated with the I-270 Express toll lanes project. So we've been coordinating with the parties pursuing those efforts. And then lastly, we're looking at a station area, I'm calling it here south of the Metro Station Access Road. This is a station on 355. Might seem really counterintuitive in terms of what I just explained of trying to get passengers close to Shady Grove, but the ideas we've been playing around with are to provide a service pattern that goes directly to the front door of Shady Grove West, but also continuing a different service pattern, the blue service pattern, directly on 355. And the reason we would do this is there are enough passengers that do not want to go to Shady Grove that would really benefit from a service that went directly down 355 and did not do the diversion into Shady Grove. And with a frequent service, we think we can provide a concept that would serve both the riders traveling straight up and down 355, as well as those who are looking for the fastest, most convenient trip into Shady Grove. Okay, so more to come on Shady Grove. Talk for a minute about Montgomery College Rockville. So Montgomery College Rockville is, of course, another really important node in the system. Has a lot of traffic, all-day traffic associated with students, faculty, and visitors and staff of the college. And so our goal here is to create a really good connection to the college. It's just really important destination through the county. As mentioned earlier in the service planning discussion, a couple of services converge as we get towards Montgomery College Rockville. We have through services that are going between the Rockville and Clarksburg area. They were going straight up and down through 355. We have one of our service patterns that proposes to terminate at the college and just proceeds to the south. And then we also have the Veers Mill BRT, which would have its western terminus at Montgomery College Rockville. So all of these things are coming together, and it really starts to affect decisions around where the station should be located and how we deal with terminal facilities and layover capacity, things like that in and around the college. There's an existing transit center of sorts at the college. It's in what's called the South Campus Drive bus loop. It's on this lower image here, the road that goes around the grove of trees, and it serves both ride-on services as well as some WMATA routes. It Unfortunately, does not appear it will have the capacity to grow to accommodate all of the BRT services. So, we're looking at different options in and around the campus that could accommodate both the local services as well as future BRT from the 355 and the Veers Mill projects. And, much like Shady Grove, we're trying to find a good balance between the directness of service to the heart of the Montgomery College Rockville campus as an important destination, but also trying to be sensitive to the passengers who really just want to ride north and south and would not appreciate a long diversion into the campus. So we have a few ideas here that are on the table. Again, the gold line, which is shown down 355, kind of right where 355 is against the WMATA right of way here on the east side. The existing alternative B modified plan would have a location of a station on 355, be just south of Manakee Street, so kind of at the southeastern corner of the super block of the campus. We're looking at a couple of other alternative locations. So here's that South Campus Drive bus loop as the current loop. It has the advantage of being really close to the heart of campus and some of these parking lots that are slated to be redeveloped with new campus buildings in the future. But it does have some capacity concerns, and it's a little bit further off of the right of way. So it would create we call a lollipop of running the routes in and out of the campus along Manakee Street. We're looking at an area here labeled Lot 13. This is actually owned by the county school district, but it is currently leased by Montgomery College for parking. The vision here would be to have a transit center of sorts that would provide connections for BRT and other local routes, and then would have an improved high quality pedestrian connection across Manakee Street into the heart of campus. And then lastly, looking at what's labeled here as 355 North, really just looking further up through the 355 corridor north of Manakee Street to see if there are other locations that would provide better access to the campus. So, the far north at the North Campus Drive signalized intersection is one possibility. Gets a little tougher through the middle here because of just the constrained right-of-way being up against the tracks and having private development. As well as a fairly high-speed roadway segment here. Running into some challenges finding a workable concepts there. But overall, we're really looking to balance the needs of accessing the college. We have a substantial amount of BRT bus operations in this area, and we need some layover space, some driver support facilities, and enough berthing space for the 3 lines that will serve this area. So we've been in discussions with Montgomery College Rockville and looking as a technical team at some of the operations planning and design aspects of these different alternatives, and we'll report more on that in the future as well. And lastly, I'll talk about the Lake Forest Mall area. So Lake Forest Mall, of course, is a enclosed indoor mall. It has been speculated that it will be redeveloped for some years, and the city of Gaithersburg is going through a master planning process for mall redevelopment. So this could be a very interesting node for serving BRT in the future. It's also the location of the Lake Forest Transit Center, which is on the southeast corner of the mall. And is currently an important connection point to other local services in the ride-on system and would be an important transfer to and from the BRT. But again, like Shady Grove, like Montgomery College Rockville, we're trying to avoid having too much of a diversion off of 355 as we go through this area. I'll show you a map of the current proposed routing in a moment. We're also looking to make sure we can preserve those critical connections to local buses and also provide access to transit-dependent riders and the services that transit riders depend on in this vicinity. So there's a lot of potential for walk-up traffic from nearby apartments and residences, and there's grocery stores and other things that are important connections for the corridor. And then in the long term, we're looking for consistency and complementary investments that would support the long-term development of the Lake Forest Mall property and the ridership that it could generate as a future mixed-use development with housing, services, retail, offices, etc. So here's the map of the Lake Forest area, and you can see from the gold route that is the current proposed phase 2 service plan. It's quite a diversion coming up Lake Forest Boulevard around Odenall Boulevard up to Lost Knife Road and then back on Christopher Street, eventually heading north on 355. One of the rationales for this routing is to serve the Lake Forest Transit Center, which you can see labeled in with the blue polygon there. It's currently proposed to be a BRT station for the area. It's also that local transit center, and there's currently a small park and ride in this area as well. One of the good things this route does is avoids a really highly congested and difficult intersection at Montgomery Village Avenue, Maryland 124 and 355. So just a really tough road for BRT to get through. But it is quite a diversion, and for folks who are traveling from the north to Clarksburg area, think of those passengers trying to get to Shady Grove as directly as possible. This routing turns out to be fairly inconvenient. So we're looking at a couple of other potential station area locations. One we're calling the Russell Avenue Frontage. This is the front end of the mall redevelopment site. This could be a potential relocation site for the Lake Forest Transit Center, which would help us to maintain those connections to local routes, as well as providing a BRT station that could serve both some of the existing development in the area, as well as future development and redevelopment in the mall site itself. We're looking at the segment of Lake Forest Boulevard as a potential area for a BRT station. And then also looking at 355 just south of Lake Forest Boulevard as a potential station location. In this area on the screen, there will probably be multiple stations serving this area as we get north towards, say, Christopher Street and head towards 355. They're not represented here as areas related to the Lake Forest Mall station, but there would be more than one BRT station in this general vicinity. Now, currently, we're looking very closely at Russell Avenue. Russell Avenue is, if you can see my pointer at all, it kind of runs south of this Russell Avenue frontage area, and it would eventually join with Christopher Street to the north. It provides quite a bit more direct connection for the BRT from north and south, so lower travel time for folks traveling through this area. It still lets us avoid the Montgomery Village Avenue 355 intersection, which is really important from a speed and operational point of view. And ideally, we'll be able to maintain the transit center connections and those connections to local routes that are really important to the overall transit service in this section of Gaithersburg. Okay, with that, I'll conclude my presentation and turn it back over to Denny for any follow-up discussion or questions. Thank you.
So before we move on to general questions, I would like to open it up to the group to explore some thoughts, see if anybody has questions or preferences on some of these station sites that Randy went over in each of the three locations. Again, at Lake Forest, at Shady Grove, and at Rockville College. Were there any of those locations that popped out for you that were no-goes that you thought had some really interesting potential that you would like to discuss with the larger group?
Danny, I don't think anyone could understand that.
Yeah, your mic was really bad.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So
The question was,
while Denny works through the many fun technical glitches that we have all experienced during COVID, I think what she was trying to get at is, we'd like to hear some of your thoughts on the various sites that Randy showed this evening for any of the three station locations, whether it be Shady Grove, Montgomery College, or the Lake Forest Mall. Do you have preferences? Do any of them stand out as being good or bad? As we try and move these forward and try and settle on one location, we really appreciate and look for the feedback from the community and those folks who would be using the service as to what they think would be best. And it looks like I see, Margaret, you have your hand up. Do you want to?
Yes. Hi, I'm Margaret Shope, and I'm from Germantown. So I just want to speak of some issues up there and let others speak of the corridor down below. Let me plug in. Here we go. You stated, Randy, that Shady Grove is the highest ridership. And but what I saw on your maps here, your presentation was, and you said that ridership is coming a lot from the north. And you mentioned Germantown and Clarksburg, but you have stopped at the top of segment 6 and saying that that last segment 7 is going to be last and it's undetermined. One of your slides showed that it's that segment 6 actually stops at Middlebrook, and another one might stop at Milestone. Those are very open corridors up there on 355, as you know. And again, when the pushback comes from Clarksburg and Germantown were served last again, but I hear that the highest ridership in Shady Grove comes from those areas up north. I really believe we should spend more time, no matter where we are in the phases here, of addressing that growing community that continues to grow, the fastest growing community in Germantown and in Clarksburg. But again, it seems to stop short for some reason. Don't know if there's another project going on or it's just avoided or what, but I think it needs to be addressed and incorporated in the movement of the Flash to expand it. And I'd like to have some comments on that from staff.
Sure. So the project is the technical kind of hardcore design parts of the project. The guideway are the most challenging parts to engineer. And the current plan for service kind of beyond or extending north of Middlebrook Road don't call for dedicated guideway. It calls for a mixed traffic operation. So the planning and design for stations is still occurring up in Germantown and looking up to extensions up in Clarksburg as well. It's just the current heavy engineering, the detailed engineering of the roadway itself is focused from segment 6 and then down to segment 2. So the service patterns will extend beyond those limits up to Germantown and to Clarksburg. It's just the focused engineering, the detailed engineering is focused on the harder segments at the moment. And then the easier segments can be brought in so that they time with the larger project.
Sorry, Corey, I'm going to jump in real quick. There are requests in the chat to show the diagrams while we're talking about them. And I think not everyone knows the segment numbers.
Okay. I'll reverse backwards here.
And then I have a follow-up and final question for the night. So I'll just wait to be called on.
And can you hear me better now?
Yes, you sound much better, Denny.
I changed my audio. Another thing, Margaret, just to follow up with what Corey said, it's the segment that we're focusing on is not only more difficult to design, it would take a much longer time to construct. So while construction could be occurring on this more infrastructure intensive segment, doing the bit of work to put in station platforms in the northern pieces or the southern pieces, that construction is much less time constrained, so that you could get a project open all at once ultimately, because you would have your construction time frame at the same time, just because of the amount of construction that would be entailed in building a dedicated travel lane versus building BRT stations along the existing roadway.
And my follow-up question and final question from me for the night is, when the project started, and I know projects change, everything was going to be a dedicated lane with curbs and all that. We have watched 29 unfold and are extremely grateful to have it. Are there still these curbed dedicated lanes in any of the 100-mile project design at this moment?
Yeah, this project does include that. From the Grosvenor Metro Rail Station. Oh, this is the perfect map, Randy. Thank you. So from Tuckerman Lane down near the Grosvenor Metro Rail Station up to Dodge Street, it would be 2 curbed median BRT lanes. And then from Dodge Street up to Summit Avenue, likely have some form of 1 median dedicated BRT lane. And then from Montgomery Village Avenue to Middlebrook Road, there would be a dedicated BRT lane. We are looking at doing mixed traffic between Summit Avenue and Montgomery Village, like I said, in the core of Gaithersburg. If you know that stretch sort of between Summit Avenue, I'm using my hands and you can't see my hands. I feel like Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands. In that segment between Summit Avenue and Montgomery Village Avenue, you know, there are those older buildings that are very close to the roadway. And the city of Gaithersburg was extremely concerned about, you know, doing any sort of widening that might impact those buildings. So we're taking a look at if there are some sort of, as Randy mentioned, traffic signal, transit signal priority, things we could do to still create a transit, a premium transit service without sort of having that same level of impact.
Thank you.
But
I had
it does
missed
have a
that.
significant amount of dedicated lane.
Yeah, I had missed that, and I thank you very much. This is great.
Great. Thank you, Margaret. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any.
Yes, from the chat, someone says, say at Lake Forest, Russell Ave is the obvious route. Why isn't it preferred?
Can you slide that, Randy?
I can, yeah, if you can hear me. Yeah, Russell Avenue is really emerging as a preferred route. I think, maybe one of the reasons it was not the leading route previously was that desire to connect to the Lake Forest Transit Center. But I think the thinking of the current design team is that providing a straighter alignment along Russell while potentially relocating the transit center is the best overall route. So we're kind of digging into the details of that. We're looking at potential locations for station siting. We're looking at potential locations for relocation of the Lake Forest Transit Center. And we're coordinating with the City of Gaithersburg on the vision for the mall redevelopment and new streets that might be introduced on the property and how those might affect transit movements in the area. So yeah, rest assured, we're looking very seriously at Russell.
Your mic's acting up again, Denny.
Can you move the slide Randy? I just talk loud, I think.
I'm not sure I caught that. Can somebody translate if you heard it?
Can you move to that slide? I apologize.
Move to that slide.
Oh, the Lake Forest. Yeah, absolutely. Get back down there.
You might need to get a whiteboard, Denny, to.
Keep going. We're almost there. Okay. Yeah. So here's Lake Forest Mall. I don't know if you can see my cursor when I move it on the actual screen, but I'm hovering over Russell Avenue right now. And possibly what the commenter is suggesting is Lake Forest Boulevard to Russell, to Christopher, back to 355. provides, a good balance of the connections through this area of Gaithersburg, provides some promising opportunities for connections to Lake Forest Mall redevelopment and the transit center, and still avoids this traffic hotspot at 355 and 124. So we're looking to try to develop that idea.
Any other comments or thoughts on any of the other station locations? I know this group is obviously focused on the more northern portions of the project.
I can give you some ones from the chat. One is, do you know what the future plans are for the Lake Forest Mall property and its potential? And then the second one after that is what will be done to protect riders from weather for long walk areas like Lot 13 at MC and the proposed Shady Grove? Has this been part of the discussions?
So I guess I'll tackle the Lake Forest one. So we have been, coordinating with city staff at the city of Gaithersburg as they've gone through their master plan process. It really is kind of a visioning document, trying to lay out kind of a vision for what the mall site could be. There is no active proposals, at least that I'm aware of, or that we've heard about for the current owner, or I guess it's technically a couple owners that own the properties at the mall. So, I guess it's yet to be seen what the ultimate kind of plan will be for the Lake Forest Mall site, but I think the interest in the vision is on definitely a more mixed use type of site that's got some combination of residential and commercial, and tries to make it more of a walkable, transit oriented type of site, which would be pretty transformative compared to what's there today. So, we're just trying to make sure that the project is positioned to take advantage of whatever ultimately does come in, and trying to stay as actively engaged with the city as we can on that. I guess, Randy, do you want to jump in and tackle the question about Montgomery College?
Sure, I'll try to. So, first at the BRT stations, they would feature the design of the flash station kit with the covered shelters and glass partitions for wind and weather protection. So, the waiting area, while still outdoors, would be somewhat protected from everything from the hot sun to torrential downpours. When you leave the platform, obviously, there's be some walking involved in the elements. For a situation like the college, if we looked at a site like Lot 13, first thing I'd observe is it's closer than the proposed Manakee station right now, so we'd be cutting some of that walk distance off. I think there are good opportunities to work with the college for, could be covered walkways through the area to campus, or at the very least a safe, accessible, well-lit and convenient connection to the buildings in the core of campus. There are people who are parking in that lot today, and many of the other lots around the college campus who, are essentially walking from their car to, the college buildings without weather protection. But, in general, as we're looking and going through the refinement of the design, one of the considerations we are thinking about in the refining of stations is we like to call in the business first last mile connections. So, how directly, how convenient, how safe can we make the walking and biking paths to and from the stations? And, if we can minimize walking distance, if we can provide safer access to controlled crosswalks and things of that nature, those are features we certainly want to build in, and they could influence the particular configuration of some of the stations up and down the alignment. So we are looking, again, really at every station platform with a bit of that eye, trying to ask ourselves, does it make sense? Does it make sense from the perspective of the passenger? And every transit rider begins or ends their trip as a pedestrian. So it's a really important aspect to the success of the system.
Any other questions in the chat, Darcy?
No. Joanna posted the link to the Lake Forest Mall Master Plan website, noting that the city is still taking comments until May 7th. So if you can't see the chat, you could just go onto the Gaithersburg website and you could find that pretty easily, I think.
And we can try, and when I send a follow-up email, when the meeting gets uploaded onto the project website, I'll try and include a link to the master plan as well, so that y'all can check that out if you're so inclined.
Oh, and Mark Pace has his hand raised.
Yep. Go ahead, Mark. You can ask your question or share your comment.
Yeah, just kind of a comment. I think that as from our meeting, I think at that one I expressed if it would work out with the school district, I think the lot 13 for the overall system would be the best. I would have some current students that would probably argue that point with me because from perception, the current loop bus stop is a little closer to some of the buildings. But with the number of routes that are going to be coming through there, I think that coming onto campus is going to slow the system, the overall system down. And there could be it could be a lot quicker using lot 13, but since, you know, the school district owns that and there's a number of complications with that location, from that sense, from the view shed of the building and things, but if it could work out, I think that's the location that ultimately serves the system the best.
Okay, I'll go back to the college slide here just for reference. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Mark. And yeah, I think you touch on a number of really critical points. One of the aspects of the South Campus Loop is, you know, today on the kind of northern curb of Manatee Street is where some of the buses lay over. So if they're terminating it at the campus, they may wait a few minutes. The driver takes a break. They're essentially parked on the side of the road, and then, you know, they'll pull back into the bus loop to do the boarding of passengers at the bus shelters that are actually on the loop itself. So it's, you know, a really growing service. It's a, you know, I think a really great thing for the college. It's a great thing for students and faculty to have better transportation options and more service. But it does really start to put pressure on that existing location. And I think, you know, we're really trying to be creative with the options we can put forward, balancing access, balancing directness of service, and as was mentioned in the earlier comments, the connection from the BRT stations to the campus, making sure it's safe and convenient and makes the service attractive.
Right. And if the lot 13 option could provide a greater amount of service in the future, where we're a little more limited using the loop. If you're looking at the future expansion of service, and we used to park 400 cars in that lot every day and have students going back and forth. And that's one of the reasons the crosswalk was put in, because of the number of students coming across, where now, I mean, now pre-COVID, I say now, that lot has been primarily used for construction workers for our student services building, and that's gone. So our amount of parking on that lot is going to probably be down to less than 25% capacity.
Great. Thanks for all the helpful feedback, Mark. I know, Denny, how's your microphone working? Are we still sound like you're an alien? So hopefully we'll get that worked out before the next meeting. But I guess, are there any additional questions or follow-up comments before we move on to the rest of the presentation? Anything in the chat, Darcy?
Nope, a couple thank yous.
Okay. Well, I guess let's move on, and I guess I'll take over, Denny, since you're.
How is this? Is this better?
Oh, that
Oh,
sounds
it's much
great.
better.
I think part of it is that my son is downstairs on a Zoom band class. And
Yep.
so
He's
we are
sucking the bandwidth.
yes, he's closer to the router than I am. Yeah. So I will go, just if I start breaking up, just interrupt me.
I'll
But
jump in.
let's talk about our next steps. As I mentioned, we are working on our 15% plan development, and we are due to have them completed this summer. And we are continuing our technical analysis of the BRT service plan, the running way, and station locations. We will be coordinating with FTA and developing a modified categorical exclusion or environmental assessment, which is part of the NEPA environmental process. And we will continue to hold stakeholder and community outreach events, including getting back with you all in the fall. And once we get back with you all and we complete these roll maps, we hope to formally adopt our locally preferred alternative, which we call the LPA. Next slide, Randy.
That's all, folks.
No,
Thanks.
okay,
Yeah.
that's it. That's the last slide. All right, so are there any more questions on this or anything else before we wrap up for the night? No. Great. Well, we might be able to end a few minutes early. We did want to be very respectful of your time and try to end on time. So if we end a few minutes early, you might get to go enjoy a few more minutes of daylight of this beautiful day. So if there is nothing else, we will be getting back with you in the fall. And if you have any questions at any time at all, feel free to reach out to us at email or the website at any time.
We have a question.
Oh, we have a question. Great.
There's a question. Did you discuss the route preferences from Germantown to Clarksburg?
We did not discuss them. However, the preference that was included in the alternative B modified included the route that went along Snowden Farm Parkway. So Randy, if you could go back to the map that shows all of the routes.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
Is it this
16.
one? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So the route that was selected is the yellow route on there. Maybe you can run along it.
It's
The easternmost.
Yes, it's the easternmost route.
mhm.
We selected that route because it is the route that matches with where the development has occurred to this point. The other two routes were along existing 355 and along Observation Drive. As you know, a lot of Observation Drive has not been constructed, or portions of it. And it is not in the timeline to be constructed at any point soon. And Maryland 355, as you know, as you get pretty far up there to the north, becomes a 2-lane road and gets far more rural in characteristic. So we felt that going along Stone Farm Parkway really sort of met the needs with where the development is going in the up-county area. Anything else?
Not on my end.
All right. Like I said, if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to email Corey or myself. I think Corey's email address is included in what you received for the link to the meeting, so you can email him. He can forward it along to me if it's a detailed question, and we will get back to you. So thank you all for joining us this evening in our first virtual CAC meeting.
Thank you.
Different, but like everything, we're adapting in the COVID world. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.